Hi there, this is Eric Steinhardt. You can learn more about me at ericsteinhardt.com. And this is a video about Plotinus, and it is about the relationship between the good and the one. Plotinus starts out with the one sits at the center of reality, and the one emanates the divine mind, which further emanates the world soul, and then emanates the universe. Now, this emanation really is looking at it from the intelligible perspective, the intelligible world, and it has a mirror image in the perceivable world. So the perceivable world has the one at the outside and matter at the inside. And that means that the perceivable world, also called the closed world or closed universe, looks sort of like this, according to Plotinus. And here is an image, a medieval image of how that geocentric universe, right, with the Earth in the center, looked to people in the Middle Ages. That's what they thought the universe was like. Now, unfortunately, they are just wrong, and that means we need to update Plotinus for today if Plotinus is going to make any sense. The world doesn't look like this. We can start to update Plotinus by looking at his version of the great chain of being. It starts with the one on top, then there's the divine mind, which proceeds from it, the world soul, then the universe, and there are degrees or grades of perfection or reality in the universe with stars and gods, right? Every star is a god in Plato and Plotinus. Then below them, humans, animals, fish, insects, plants, rocks, something like that is what the great chain looks like. And if we look at the great chain, we see that there's kind of an arrow of complexity. Rocks are simpler than plants, plants simpler than insects, insects simpler than fish. And as you go up the great chain, all the way up to the divine mind, complexity increases. But the funny thing is that at the divine mind to the one, that transition, the divine mind is infinitely complex, and yet the one is simple. There's a gap, there's a discontinuity there, that something simple proceeds to generate something infinitely complex, and then complexity decreases, and it decreases down. So there's something wrong with that way of looking at it, that discontinuity. And a better way, a more logical way, is to put the one at the bottom of the great chain. So the one is simple, it's at the bottom, right? And complexity goes up from the one to the divine mind. Now, it might seem heretical to put the one at the bottom of things, but Plotinus does talk about it that way. He talks about it, for instance, as the root of a tree, right? Think of the life coursing through some mighty tree, while yet the stationary principle of the whole is not scattered, but remains in the root. It's the giver of the entire and manifold life of the tree, but remains unmoved itself. He talks about this in Aeneid's 3.8.10 and 3.3.7. He also describes the one as a spring. Imagine a spring that has no source outside itself. It gives itself to all the rivers, yet is never exhausted by what they take, but remains integrally always as it was. So the one there described as being sort of at the bottom, the ground of being. A spring comes up from the ground. A root is buried in the ground. And the image of the one as the root of the tree, of course, suggests that the tree emerges from the one. It grows upwards from the one into complexity and multiplicity. And Plotinus describes the one as self-replicating, right? Kind of a biological image. He says the highest began as a unity but did not remain as it began. All unknown to itself, it became manifold. It grew as it were pregnant. The one at the bottom is pregnant and gives birth to something that follows after it, something that is more complex, which gives birth to other things that are then more complex. So we have a story here of replication with variation. The one self-replicates and makes other things. So what about the sun? Where does the sun stand then in this image? The sun is something that Plotinus often talks about. The good is the sun. Plato, of course, thought about the good as the sun. And, okay, the sun is the good, right? But the sun is distinct from the one. The one is down at the bottom, the sun is at the top, and we have a tree here now conceived of using some more modern cosmology as a tree of universes, starting with some very simple universes, growing through replication to more complex universes. And that would be the good and the